broadly put, Govind's question is, what is education? And it's wonderful that at least now we are asking, what is education? This question should have been asked way earlier. This question should have been asked many, many years back. But it's not too bad that it's being asked at least today. What is education? Why do we get educated? There are two kinds of education. Just as man has two ends, just as every human being has two ends, similarly there are two kinds of education. Before we go into these two types, we'll have to understand what are these two ends at which all of us exist. On one end, at one pole, we are just machines, absolutely mechanical, pre-programmed. We do not decide the configuration of our body. We do not decide our design. We do not decide our birth. We do not decide how and when hunger will arise. We do not decide how we are growing up, how the cells in the body are multiplying. That is one particular end, the physical end. At the physical end, we are all programmed machines. And at this end, there is very little freedom. Very, very little freedom. Then there is another end, the end of free will, where there is no conditioning at all, where you really know what is happening, where no forces dominate over you, where you can understand all the programmed activity that is going around you. Man exists between these two ends, between these two poles. And it is upon you where you want to be. If you are closer to the programmed pole, if you are deeply body identified, there will be very little freedom there and a lot of fear, because a machine has nothing of its own. It all comes from the outside and it all can be taken back by the outside. On the other end, where there is free will, where there is understanding, where there is knowing, there is a lot of freedom. And there is no need for any fear, because nothing that you have can be taken away there. This end is not physical. This end is pure mind. And this end is body, the physical end. Man exists between these two poles. This is an axis, and man can be anywhere on this axis. There is one kind of education which deals with the physical only, just the physical. This education is concerned only with sustaining the body And sustaining the body including earning money, having some kind of shelter, and all the other stuff. This is the kind of education that we have been receiving since our childhood. Look closely at everything that you have studied since childhood, and you will find that it has only one purpose: to sustain the body, to make the sustenance of the body more comfortable. It has no utility beyond that. It takes care of only one pole of man's existence: the bodily pole, the physical pole. You want to know about the rivers and the mountains, they are physical. You want to know about the structure of the atom, it is physical. And what do you do after knowing the structure of the atom? You generate electricity, which gives you certain bodily comforts, which is all right, because that is one pole of our existence, that is one end of our existence. So it is all right. It is all right. We are not finding any fault with that. It is important to have that kind of education which we have been receiving. This education will probably get you a job, will get you some money. This education has given us medicine, the entire expanse of medical science, which helps keep the body fit, which prevents diseases. But this education is not sufficient. It is important, but not at all sufficient. Because man is not body alone. We do not live merely to eat and be protected under a shelter. Or do you live merely for that? To eat, reproduce, and be protected. Is that what you live for? But our entire education so far looks only at the physical world. Only at the physical world. Languages, history, geography, mathematics, physics, obviously, economics. You name it. This is lower education. There is another end of education, which is the real, the higher education. When I am calling it real, I do not mean that the other end is unreal. That other end is all right, it's needed, it's important. It makes life comfortable. But that end is not sufficient. If you have only that end, then you have all the technological innovations, but very stupid minds. If you have only this end, then you know the structure of the atom, but do not understand what is happening in your own heart. Einstein had said that we are living in an age where it is easier to break an atom than to break a prejudice. It is because we get only this kind of education, which deals only with the physical, the lower education. You may know the farthest expanses of the universe, but what will you do? You will colonize other planets. You will even colonize other galaxies. You will use space to wage war against other men. And that's what man has been planning. That the one who controls space will control Earth. Hence, there is a race among nations to reach other planets and do all these things. This is what happens when only this kind of education prevails. You will move into the heart of the atom. You will split it. But you will not know the consciousness that is looking at the atom. Somebody has said smartphones and stupid people. You will have very smart phones, but the people using them will be absolutely stupid. You will have guided missiles. Missiles that are so smart that you can guide them and they can go and hit any plant. But you will have very unguided minds. This is what will happen when only this end of education is taken care of. Absolute madness, great anarchy. And man will give himself 1,000 tools of destruction. Today you know how we are destroying the planet with global warming. Today you know that we have enough fissile material to destroy the earth not once but hundreds of times. What kind of madness is this? Today we very well know what is causing climate change. Yet we are doing the same things that will keep increasing the pace of climate change. This is what happens when you have only that kind of education which says take care of the body and that the body is all you have. So what are so many people saying? They are saying the body is all I have and my body will last another 20-30 years and by that time earth will be alright and I do not care what will happen after 30 years. I am the body and my body will be there for the next 20-30 years. So let me consume, let me pollute and let me enjoy myself. Finished. Are you getting it? Another kind of education is completely missing. The higher education, as we said. This education looks at that which is not mechanical. It looks at the other end of your being. It brings your mind to the free end of your being. It is the awakening of intelligence. It is the finding of oneself. It is the asking of the question, who am I? It is the intelligent observation of the activities of one's mind. It is the understanding of conditioning. And this is higher education. You know, in India, we use the word Vidya for education. Are you aware that the education that you have been receiving so far is not at all called Vidya? It is called Avidya. All this technological study and the study of languages and everything. The scriptures don't call it Vidya, they say it is Avidya. Knowledge about the world is Avidya. Vidya is only knowledge about the self. We have not received any Vidya so far. Avidya is important. Avidya too is important. But Vidya is far more important. And we have been trained fully in Avidya with no environment, no exposure to Avidya, to Vidya. The real education, the higher education. I know everything about how this fan works, but I know nothing about why I work. I fully well know why this fan gets heated up, but I do not know why I get heated up and become angry. I fully well know why a particular chemical breaks up and disappears, but I do not understand what is meant by my own death. I have never tried to encounter that. I have never asked that question because my education has been of this kind, and here the question of death is not taken up at all. No syllabus covers death. You have had many subjects till now. Have you had any subject named or titled I, me, myself? You have read about the trees and the mountains, the computers and the clothes, but you have never been brought to yourself. That is one thing that you have never read about. That is one thing that you have never bothered to inquire. As if everything is important except you. Everything in the world is worth studying except yourself. So know about everything, but don't know about yourself. That's a taboo. And there are many forces all around that want that taboo to be maintained, that want young people like you to remain ignorant about yourselves. They have vested interests. If you will know your own functioning, if you will understand your conditioning, your slavery, then you will not remain slaves. Hence, they will not give you the other kind of education. They will give you only one kind of education, which perpetuates your slavery. Don't you see that you are being prepared as finished products to be supplied to some corporations who need to fill their vacancies? They need products of a certain kind. And those products are being produced in our schools and colleges. If the industry needs people who can make good shoes, colleges will start courses on making good shoes. "20 years back, there were not many colleges who had so many seats in computer science and IT. Today, because somebody outside is demanding, give me more people. So our education, this kind of education, is producing more and more output that is useful to that person there. That person there is dictating what you are studying. So he is greatly interested that you receive only this kind of education and that you never are exposed to the real education. A particular industry starts booming and our colleges float courses in that kind of thing. Real estate, there was a lot of activity in that. So you had MBA programs coming up with specialization in retail estate management. Now what are you? Just some material to be supplied to somebody so that it can fulfill his needs and he can give you some money with which you can fill your stomach? That's what you are? Are you that? Well, unfortunately, most of us think that we are no more than that. We are content with this education. We don't want to go beyond this. The world outside is greedy and competitive and violent. So it ensures that the education that you receive in your schools and colleges makes you greedy and competitive and violent. This education gives you bread and butter, but makes you deeply into a slave. I hope you are able to see what I am saying. Have you really chosen what you are studying? Ask yourself. Stop and ask yourself. Why am I studying what I am studying? And there is so much else that is worth looking at. Why am I not looking at that? It's a question that you must pause and ask. Who is dictating my syllabus? Who is determining what I ought to study? Am I just a machine, or am I something beyond that? A lot of tasks that we do as employees can actually be taken up by robots, machines. And that is actually happening in places like Japan, where there are very few young people. They have an aging population. And that shows us how replaceable we are. Because a machine is always replaceable by another machine. Always. But intelligence is not replaceable by any machine. A machine will always work within its programming. It is this end which makes you really human. It is this end which makes you really valuable. If you do not give attention to this education, you will find yourself rejected by life itself. You will find that you are just living a degraded life. Pay attention to the real thing. Before you move into a career, ask yourself, why am I doing this job? This body will last only so many years. What is this time going to be spent doing? Ask yourself. Don't just jump into things. Everybody has a particular track. Class 10th, class 12th, then BTech, then MBA, then this. And I too am running on the track. Don't do that. That track leads nowhere. And it's a very frustrating feeling to have run a lot and then find that the entire thing leads nowhere. It's a very frustrating thing. You are young today. You must ask yourself, what is life? What am I entering? What is really valuable in life? Yes, of course, we have stomachs to fill. Of course, we have bodies to cover. And that must be taken care of. But is that all? Or is that just the foundational, the basic thing? And it's not something that is being understood today. 2000 years back, Jesus had said, man does not live by bread alone. Anybody who ever understands knows this fully well. And ask yourself, is your education giving you anything beyond the methods to earn your bread? Is your education giving you anything beyond a degree or certificate that entitles you to some kind of livelihood? If not, then it is a very, very poor education. Extremely poor education. Let me assure you, what you do on these Saturdays is more valuable than what you do for the rest of the week. Put your Mondays to Fridays together, and still your Saturdays are more important and more valuable than the rest of the week combined, taken together. I'm not asking you to not to value your regular academics. I'm asking you to put things in perspective. I'm asking you to understand what is really important. So many people are born and they die. Even where we are sitting right now, this piece of land would be containing the remains, the bodies of hundreds and thousands of people. People come and go. You too are already on the journey of going away. 30, 40, 50 years is nothing. What are you so complacent about? Ask yourself, what is this time to be spent doing? Don't just be victims of your education, that your education has given you a degree, so you must pursue that field. It's all right. So far, you had no option, so you were doing what everybody else does. Today, you must ask yourself, getting it? Yes? All right.